Welcome back to the 2020 Region Rundown here on AccessWDUN.com. It's part two of our series with Region 7-3A. We've got 6 area teams, in Region 7-3A. Again, we welcome you into the show. Bo Wilson across the screen from Jeff Hart today. And Jeff, we take a look today at Lumpkin and North Hall.
Yeah, 2 are in the can. We talked about White County and West Hall yesterday and got their thoughts. And today we're going to, we talked to David Bishop at North Hall and Caleb Sorrells at Lumpkin. 2 programs kind of, at least from the last couple of years, on the opposite ends. North Hall, looking for title runs and making a playoff run. And Lumpkin kind of in a rebuild mode. And I think Lumpkin may still be in that rebuild mode. They had a lot of injuries. They were young last year, but we talked to Caleb Sorrells. We'll get his thoughts on kind of what the Indians have. They may have a little more than I think people thought. And of course, with David Bishop, I think they graduated everyone. At least that's what he said.
Yeah.
And you know how Coach Bishop is. But they still got talent. There's still talent up there in Murrayville. So it's interesting to see what both the coaches had to say. I still see North Hall, making a run at the playoffs. And I think Lumpkin, again, they're still in rebuild mode, but you never really know how the season's going to progress. And we talked yesterday and today, the region's really kind of wide open when you look at perhaps the last 2 playoff spots or even 3 or maybe all 4 playoff spots.
Yeah, it is kind of wide open. And yesterday we talked with Coach Montgomery, Coach Coakley of West Hall and White County, got their take on that. And, with the newcomers that's coming into the region, White County, West Hall, those are 2 of them. Gilmer's the other one coming into the region, Jeff. And it kind of changes the dynamic somewhat because GAC, 4-time defending region champ, gone. East Hall is also gone. East Hall went up to 4A. So now, as you said just a moment ago, Region 7-3A, to me, it's really wide open.
It is. And Fannin moved over, I believe, to 7-2A. They were a playoff team last year. So you lost half of the playoff teams from the region. And we mentioned yesterday, only 2 of the teams in the newly configured 7-3A even went to the playoffs last year. White County was the only other team that had a 500 record. Of course, they were in that brutal 7-4A. They might have made a run at the region title in 7-AAA last year with what they had. So I think I think the dynamics of the region, where there's a lot of rivalries, a lot of natural rivalries, I think that's going to play well. And I think the talent level is a little more even probably than what we've seen in the last few years in 7-AAA. Again, North Hall has lost a bunch. Dawson lost. I think we'll get to Dawson tomorrow, but they lost their top 6 tacklers, like over 450 tackles on the defensive side. That's a lot. That is a lot. But again, they had the number 1 offense in the region last year. So I think there's a lot of dynamics at play here in 7-AAA.
Well, these 2 teams today, Lumpkin County with Coach Sorrells, he came in last year late to the show, and then he has to deal with COVID this year.
He has had I'm going to tell you, he's been, you got to think, he's probably got to wonder, is the world against me here?
Yeah, no doubt. And so he's continuing developing his program in Dahlonega. And then Coach Bishop, as you said earlier, he lost like 40,000 people and is going to be terrible. So,
yeah. I wonder if he was exaggerating just
maybe
a little bit.
Just a smidge.
Maybe. But that's we love Coach Bishop. He's one of our favorites. And that's kind of his MO. He poor mouths his own team, maybe bird dogs you just a little bit.
Just a bit. Well, hey, let's stop wasting time. Let's get to them. It's Coach Caleb Sorrells of Lumpkin County and Coach David Bishop from North Hall right here on the part 2 of our Region 7-3A rundown. Moving on in Region 7-3A as we continue our 2020 region rundown of all the teams in our area. We welcome into the show Caleb Sorrells, Lumpkin County head football coach. Hey, Coach, welcome in today. And, first off, we've talked all the coaches about not only the region, but what you guys have been doing in the COVID shutdown. So how's it been going with you guys?
It's one of those, and everybody's in the same boat, I guess, but we're excited to be able to get a full spring practice, a full off season. We were making some great games in the weight room and everything just gets shut down. So it's a challenge. Clearly, I can't imagine having been 16, 17 years old and having to stop my spring semester and go, all right, you're just going to do everything else on your own. You got no friends, you got no teachers, and you're just on your own trying to figure it all out. Make sure you're working out. Make sure, so our kids, I think, are doing as good a job as you can expect in a really, really challenging environment. So, it's really more about keeping them engaged and making sure that they know that we're still here and we still care about them. We're still here and we're still holding them accountable, and trying to give them an opportunity to be together as much as obviously it's not really together, but as much as possible. Weekly Zoom meetings and trying to do some position meetings and at least get the mental process started, even if the physical is obviously going to be behind.
Coach, this has also been a challenge for you. This was your first head coaching job, and you come in late in your first season, and then your second season just gets blown up like this. I mean, it'd be interesting to see when if you get a normal year for you to be able to get everything prepared. Who have you been leaning on, I guess, in the coaching world? Because like I said, you haven't had anything normal happen since you started your head coaching career.
There's no guidebook for what we're doing. Nobody, you can't. There's nobody you can call. I've got some great mentors, and my dad was a coach. My granddad was a coach. My brother-in-law was a really successful high school coach. I got a lot of people that I have leaned on for a lot of different things in my coaching career. Nobody has ever done this, so there's no. It's a matter of just talking to people, maybe not even so much that are, it's not even so much about successful coaches, but it's just about people that you trust and people that you value their opinions and saying, well, what do you think? People that I think are wise, even if they're not coaches. What do you think the best way to handle this is? I've got some great guys on my staff. Paul Hoke is our defense coordinator and has been around a lot of really successful teams, but also one of those guys that's really wise, and I really value his opinion. And so I've leaned on him, but it's truly just a matter of kind of having to step back and say, all right, what do we think is the best thing to do here? Not based on what everybody else is doing, but just what for our kids in this situation. What do we think is the best thing? What can we do? What can we not do? So it's a lot of just figuring it out as you go along and being willing to say, it didn't work, so let's try something else.
Well, Coach, you entered this season coming off a 1-9 in your first year. You've basically, I think you took this job knowing that you had a building job to do and creating a new culture at Lumpkin County. And now you head into your second year with that, also heading into a new region 7-3A. It's some new teams, some familiar teams coming in. Of course, White County and Lumpkin, that's a rival. You two are rivals, and you've got Gilmer coming in and West Hall coming back into the region. What is your overall take on the new Region 7-3A?
So it's the only team that wasn't there last year is West Hall. So none of them are necessarily other than West Hall. And I know Coach Montgomery's got a very interesting hire over there on his offensive staff. So it'll be really interesting to see what they end up looking like with Coach Miller. But other than them, we've seen White County. Obviously, we've seen Gilmer, and everybody else is still in the region. So I think it will be a tough draw to be competing for one of those top four spots. But not undoable, not impossible, but it will be difficult. I think, but obviously, kind of towards the people who will probably be competing for that fourth spot, us and West Hall and Gilmer and possibly Cherokee Bluff. It'll be very interesting to see how they develop and what their roster looks like this year. But I think all of us are in a similar boat where we're probably on the right track and we're probably doing the right thing. So now it's just going to be a race to see who can do it fast enough to compete for a spot, in the playoffs.
Well, Coach, you just talked about you're very familiar with everyone. I think a lot of people initially are saying probably Dawson White when you look at what they have coming back. But after that, it seems very, very wide open. what does the Indians? You're going to be looking for a new quarterback. You're going to be replacing some other key guys. What is it that you're going to be looking at from your team to throw yourself in the mix in what should be a really wide open playoff race?
Sure. I mean, it's going to be, and this is, it sounds like a coaching cliche, and I'm really not trying to, I'm not trying to avoid the question, but the reality is we got to block and tackle better. Period. And it doesn't matter what scheme we end up in. It doesn't matter, whether we're odd or even on defense. It doesn't matter whether we're shotgun or under. None of that matters if you can't block and tackle. So until they completely change the rules and put flags on us, that's what the game will always be about.
Hey, watch out, Coach.
I don't know.
Let's don't do that.
Careful what you say around here.
But as long as it's tackle football, it's going to be about blocking guys and tackling guys. So truly, that's what we're gonna focus on being as simple as we can. And if we're going to mess up, it's not going to be because we're too complex. It's not going to be because our kids don't understand. Now, it may be that we need more reps. It may be that we're not, we may not be a good matchup from one kid to another, but it will not be because we tried to fix execution problems with more scheme. And I said, not that we did that last year, but I think as you looked at last year, and there's a ton of, I can go through all these things that happened last year and say this and this, and all those things were tough to overcome. But at the end of the day, we probably should have been even more simple than we were. And that's going to be something that we really, really dial in on. We're going to block, we're going to tackle, and we will add to that. We'll add on top of that only after we master those basics.
Well, Coach, Jeff mentioned a little while ago about you coming in last year, your first year, had some obstacles there. This year, the COVID obstacles. What did you learn in your first year as a head coach?
Oh, goodness. That I've heard a bunch of people over the years. I remember the first guy that I worked for phrased it like this: "It's just different when you're in this chair." He said that sitting behind his desk in his office. He said, "It's just different when you're in this chair." And it is. It's just there was a dozen things that I knew that I wasn't going to like, or the extra parts of the job. This is part of it, and there was probably 3 dozen on top of that I had no idea that was coming. There was more extra things that I was just like, golly bum, I just want to coach ball, And so I think the biggest thing that I learned, and the thing that I'm going to try to take into year 2 is delegate more, allow the guys that I've got around me to do more because they're capable of doing more, and because I just not only can I not do it all, but I don't need to do it all. I've got some that can help me in that. And I think 2 is, and again, it's going to sound like a cliche, but just keeping the main things the main thing. And the little tiny things that sometimes I just because I'm this kind of guy, I let the little things bother me when they're too little to be bothering me. So I think learning to separate that may be a 25-year process. I don't think I'm going to master that in year 2, but at least I would like to get better in year 2 at being able to focus in on the things that really matter and be able to just kind of brush off the things that don't matter.
Well, Coach, we were just talking. We were talking about all the things that were going on. What are some of the things that we can see from Lumpkin County this year? You're going to be having a new quarterback battle. You're going to have some other young kids that you're going to have to step up this year. Who are some of those guys that as fans we can be on the lookout for?
So the quarterback battle is wide open. I don't know that I really appreciated how nice it was to step in year 1 with a senior quarterback who kind of had a good grasp of just football in general and calm and so going into year 2, that is a wide open position. Cooper Scott is the guy that kind of right now is at the head of the pack just because he was our JV quarterback last year as a freshman, and so he's just kind of that guy that's just got a little bit of a knack, doesn't let things rattle him. Usually knows where to go with the ball. So I'm excited to see how he develops, how he can take the reins and be the guy. But I also, the same thing I told him, there's a couple other kids that I hope are going to push him for that spot. That's not a spot that's his by default. It's not something that he's entitled to. And he knows that, he understands that, because he's that high character quarterback guy that you want. But there's a couple more that young guys, and they're probably equally untested. But I think they have the physical abilities to push him. So that we're going to let them compete for that and see who wins. I think Drew Allison, hopefully, if he can stay healthy, I really think he's going to have an unbelievable year. He couldn't buy a break last year. It was unbelievable. He played on a broken leg at one point.
Wow.
Tough through it. It was one of those, hairline fractures or whatever, and just nagging, and finally figured out what it was. But and then he kind of took him a long time back, but he was our best ball carrier. So hopefully he'll get back on that. He was just learning to really turn it loose as a defensive end, which is a position he'd never played before. And then, the injury, he just never could quite get comfortable enough to really dial in and play like he can play. So I think this year could be a really good year for him. I think it'll be interesting to see how Jared Hoke develops. There's a chance that he may end up playing a couple of different positions for us on defense. I think he'll also play a bigger role on offense as a wideout. Several rising sophomores that we're going to have to count on. You got to be ready. You don't have any choice. You'd rather not have to play too many 10th graders because they're it's early. But there's a couple that we're going to have to count on, and I think they're capable. I think they can do it. But Caden Gibson and Caleb Norrell, who played great for us at the end of the year at wideout. Cooper Scott is a rising sophomore. Ricky Hicks is our returning. He'll be a junior. He's our center. He was he's the only captain we have returning. So that makes you feel good that the guy that's starting every play is also a captain and has got some game experience. And so there's a lot of holes to fill. But I think there's also a lot of hope and a lot of guys that we're excited to see fill it.
Well, Coach, who's going to win the region?
That's an interesting question. I would say the team with the best record.
There you go. None of you guys want to answer that question. Nobody.
Again, that's all six of them. Nobody said I am.
Yeah, nobody said.
No, nobody said we will. So nobody's winning this region, Bo. I think that's what we can take.
Nobody wants a bullseye, I guess. I don't know.
Any given Friday.
We're just kidding, Coach. And now we have North Hall coach Dave Bishop. Coach, great season last year, 2019. Really some prolific numbers. What do you see coming into this year? I know you guys have lost roughly, I think, about 20 starters on both sides of the ball combined. What do you see for coming into this year?
Well, obviously with those numbers, we're talking about a very young football team. The one thing I can honestly say, they're a hard-working bunch, which is a positive to all that. The sad part is we felt like we were making a lot of headway with this group in the off season. We started working with them in February, and they were just progressing. Every day you could see something great happening within individuals. And then, we got hit with the COVID. So, things have slowed down a little bit, and we're just hoping that we continue to work with them, as we're doing through the internet and stuff like that. But that never takes place of, building mental toughness and physical toughness and awareness.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bud.
I want to throw the question out about the brand new region 7-3A. Some familiar teams in that region. White County moving into the region, West Hall moving into the region. That's really nothing new other than the fact they've been in the region with you guys before, except now it's just a completely new region with Gilmer coming in as well. What are your overall thoughts on the new Region 7-3A?
Well, the one thing that I do like about it is I think every team has an opportunity to win a championship when things are where they need to be, with their athletes and the numbers. It was a little tough through the last 4 years when you have GAC in your region, and, you're basically everybody's looking to one team to knock off. And unfortunately, during that time period, none of us were able to do that. We do know that Dawson's going to be good every year. Sid's done a tremendous job over there. And, if you were to probably take bets on who would be the region champ going into next year, most people would probably pick, White County. Coach Coakley's done a tremendous job over there. And they were pretty young last year on defense, and their defense got better. I mean, they, so there's a lot of things. I know Coach Saunders over there at Gilmer. I knew him. I coached against him when I was coaching up in Virginia, and he did a tremendous job up there. And I know he's got that, program going in the right direction. So, I see a lot of opportunities for folks that maybe they hadn't seen in the past.
I think that seems to be the consensus, Coach. I think most everybody early on paper, I think, is looking at Dawson perhaps or White County. But really, it seems like it's pretty wide open. And although you're going to have a young group that you're going to have to kind of put back together a little bit, and you're losing almost 2,500 yards of rushing offense when you look at the guys like J.T. Fair and some of the guys you lost. But I think it's safe to say it seems pretty wide open.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's great about it is there's no super powerhouse that you've got to look at and go, okay, how do we beat these guys? How is it possible? As a coach, you're always coaching to win, but there's no big daunting team. There's some really good football teams, but not that one that everybody looks at and gets concerned about.
Well, Coach, along the lines of returning players, Jeff, he hinted around some of those, but you do have some key returning players coming back, for you. And I know it's going to be a young team for you, but you've got Dalton Battle coming back. You've got, looks like Clark Howell's coming back. That's a big comeback. Tate Brooks, Kevin Rochester, those guys coming back. Do you feel comfortable about the leadership coming back this season for your team?
That was part of what I was discussing earlier. We were starting to really build a lot of that with the work we were doing in the weight room after school, doing that with leadership meetings. Now, granted, we're still doing them. It's just not the same. You don't have the ability like we would teach something, and then they would have kind of what I call assignments. I say, hey, you got homework for this week. So they'd go out and try to learn how to lead. So we've lost a portion of that. But I think all in all, when we get back, kids have been chomping at the bit to get back. So I see them, being able to pick up the slack pretty quick.
Well, Coach, is there you got a pretty good schedule coming up. Is there an early game that you're going to look at if we, let's assume everything is normal and you get to start on time and you go to your schedule. Is there an early game that you're looking at that kind of will be able to give you a barometer of what you got?
Well, I think we have two real fast. Really, I mean, I look at the four non-region games. We open with Paulding County, which is a 6A school. They're coming to us. They've never played us, so they don't really know what to expect, and vice versa. They do have, I think he's considered the number 18 athlete in the country on their team. So he's pretty special. He plays running back and linebacker. They've got some size and speed and numbers over top of us. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. Then we have Hart County in week 3. So you're looking at two really, really good football teams there in the first 3 weeks. And then you consider you throw Stevens in, who's, on their way back, I believe. They hit the bottom and they got a good group of kids returning. So it'll be interesting in those first few weeks. And then we finish up a non-region with Chestatee. So, how do our kids handle that pressure of somewhat of a rivalry that goes on every year between the two teams? And we'll be over there again. So it'll be interesting.
So, in this COVID stuff, you obviously didn't get a chance. You haven't had a chance to be with your team since I think it was March 13th to even see any of them. What have you been doing since that time with the players? I know a lot of coaches are doing Zoom meetings and maybe even doing some position group workouts on Zoom. What have you guys been doing?
A lot of the same, to be quite honest with you. One, we had it set up on our schedule while we were in school that we were going to spend February and March doing offensive meetings. And then we were going to do April and May for defensive meetings. So we've kind of held true to that, and been meeting on Zoom with our kids. So we've learned how to do what they call breakout sessions. So we might come in as a team, on defensive team, and sit there together and talk about a scheme, and then we'll break out. So the secondary will go into one room, the linebackers go in a room, and myself and Coach Brecker will take the DL in another room. Then we may be doing like that. So our breakout now becomes linebackers and DL, and then secondary, and then it may be DL by itself, and then secondary and linebackers together. So that's part of it. And then we've also been doing weekly leadership meetings, which is something that I believe strongly in. And we sit down, we spend about 45 minutes, going through our leadership principles.
Coach, you've when you speaking of leadership, and also speaking of players that are returning, what is your biggest concern right now? Take the COVID stuff out and not being with them, but your biggest concern right now with your team, I guess, position wise.
I've pretty much over the last few years positioned our team where, we would have spring football and we'd be able to evaluate. And we weren't going to be able to do that this year. We just had way too many kids in second sports. And I felt like it would be, not well for us if we did that. Then I usually have an 11 on June and 11-11 in July, and right there before. So we're able to have 3 evaluation periods. Well, when you have a young team that's really has very little or no experience, we do lose that evaluation time in 11 on 11, quote unquote, contact camps. So to me, that's kind of the biggest thing that I feel like we're going to be losing because of this.
Well, Coach, getting back a little bit also, just to this new region, you're going to have some rivalries you've had, like White County. You mentioned Chessie in a non-region. You still got Dawson, but and Cherokee Bluff. You got Lump. You got there's some great local area rivalries in this region. I also see this as an opportunity for this area with this region to be able to kind of make a little bit of a statement, if everybody is able to progress throughout the season.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Cherokee Bluff, because that's a team I think that, as the season wore on last year, they got better. They had us, despite the fact that you were to look at the numbers at the end, they had us reeling for a quarter and a half in the first half. So I expect them to get better. And like you said, you start taking good teams and you give them number 1 seeds, and you can do some damage when you're a number 1 seed versus a number 4 seed.
That is true. I will have to say, not to show bias, but it's nice to not have GAC in the region anymore. Not because they were hard to beat. Obviously when you have a program like that, it makes everybody have to step up a little bit, which I think several teams have. But now this area will get to show what it has in this area, and not, well, there's this area and then there's this private school. So that's kind of what's exciting for me.
Yeah, I think it starts to mirror a little bit of the early and mid 2000s. I know there's no East Hall in the region, and Gainesville, but you're starting to get a little bit more back to the proximity teams being in the same region instead of being spread out so much. It's been a while since we've had this many local teams in one area together in a region.
Well, Coach, I know I always ask the coaches, any predictions for the region?
Predictions for the region. Somebody is going to get first.
Wow.
And second, and I think somebody will do that all the way down to whoever's in last. I don't like predicting.
I love a guy that just throws it out there out in the open for everybody to see.
I will have to go back to what I did say earlier, and if you were to look at who people would consider the front runner, it would definitely have to be Dawson with White County right there. Jay Ben's been at it for 4 years. He's got a couple good receivers back and some running backs back, as well as almost all their defense. So, those are going to be 2 teams that I think are just going to be tough to beat.
Well, I think a lot of people are going to be inclined to probably Well, this might be the year that North Hall kind of has to regroup. But I tell you, just the way y'all run the system and everything, I still like y'all to have a good shot at making the playoffs. I think Cherokee Bluff, I think you mentioned that's a team on the rise. West Hall is only going to be able to go up from, they just had a decimated year last year. I tell you, if we're able to get back, I think this could really play out to be a very good and competitive region.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I'm excited to see what it looks like, to be quite honest with you.
Well, Coach, we won't take any more of your time. I know you got some flowers to plant or something back there.
No, I'm on the clock until about 3:30. So, after that, I will do some flower planting.
All right, Coach. Well, appreciate it. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you.
Thank you.